Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Congresswoman Sherrill's Telephone Town Hall. Today is Women Veterans Appreciation Day, and this evening, our town hall is focused on veterans issues. My name is Willie Tolba, and I am a part of the district casework team, and I serve as the Congresswoman's Military and Veterans Liaison. So while we're waiting for everyone to get on, I'm quickly going to run through some of the logistical information for tonight's event. We'll begin tonight's town hall with opening remarks from the Congresswoman. After that, the Congresswoman will introduce her guests and pose a few pre-submitted questions to get tonight's discussion started. We received lots of great questions even before the town hall started, so thank you for everyone who submitted a question. After this, we'll open up the line for questions. If you would like to ask a question, please press *3 on your phone at any time, and you'll be connected with one of our staff members, and then you'll be put in the queue to ask your question live. When you are given the opportunity to ask your question live, I will call on you. Please try to keep your question brief so that we can get to as many questions as possible in the time that we have together. If we do not get to your question today, you can email it to the Congresswoman by going to our website at sherrill.house.gov/contact. Any questions you might have regarding assistance with a federal agency, please feel free to ask your question, and your call will be promptly returned by one of our caseworkers who are also with us tonight. You can also reach our office at 973-526-5668. And without further delay, I will pass this over to Congresswoman Sherrill.
Thanks, Willie, and good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me today for my telephone town hall focused on veterans issues. I'm speaking to you from Washington, D.C. as we head into another week of voting, and I look forward to having another in-person town hall in the district this summer. Today, June 12th, is Women Veterans Appreciation Day in New Jersey, which recognizes the service and sacrifices of women veterans and brings attention to the unique needs of women veterans. We mark this celebration on June 12th because on this day, in 1948, President Harry Truman signed the Women's Armed Services Integration Act, allowing women to serve as regular members of the military. And today, women make up almost 20% of our armed forces. Congress has made great strides in addressing the disparities in care, recognition, and benefits that our women veterans receive, but there's more work to be done. New Jersey began marking June 12th as Women Veterans Appreciation Day in 2019, and throughout my time in Congress, it's been my mission to make this a federally recognized day to help bring attention to the unique needs of women veterans in the United States and to recognize their contributions to our country. I want to take a minute to thank the many veteran advocates in New Jersey who've worked to get this day recognized, including the SOS Veterans Stakeholder Group and especially the Women's Subcommittee. You've all been critical advisors to me since my early days in office, and I know you're all gathering for a Women Veterans Dinner later tonight. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Currently, the largest number of women veterans are serving in Congress. We teamed up in a bipartisan way and reintroduced today a resolution that would federally recognize Women Veterans Appreciation Day. This is a resolution deeply important to women veterans in my district and with strong bipartisan support in this Congress. I'm hopeful this is the year we get this resolution across the finish line. Before I introduce you all to our two great guests joining us today to help answer questions, I'll first give you a quick legislative update. As many of you know, last month was a concerning time down here in Washington. In an attempt to make devastating cuts to important government programs, Speaker McCarthy and the far-right wing of the Republican Party were pushing our nation towards default and economic disaster. The cuts they wanted to make would have led to 30 million fewer veteran outpatient visits, including 219,000 in New Jersey alone, 81,000 jobs lost across the Veterans Health Administration, resulting in vets being unable to get appointments for care, including wellness visits, cancer screenings, mental health services, and substance use disorder treatment. The Biden administration went into negotiations with Speaker McCarthy in order to stop these unfair cuts. And one of my top concerns was ensuring that funding was not cut from the Toxic Exposure Fund for the PACT Act healthcare program that we passed last Congress. The PACT Act created a presumption of service connection for as many as 3.5 million veterans who were exposed to toxic burn pits while serving in our armed forces. Burn pit exposure is this generation's Agent Orange and is absolutely devastating amongst the most recent generation of veterans. This legislation makes it easier to access the health care needed to treat the cancer and other health issues caused by this exposure. Keeping our promises to our veterans by keeping this program funded was paramount to me. I'm proud to say that this program was protected in the debt ceiling deal by this administration. Over the past few years, we've made meaningful investments in our economy, and we're seeing great results in reshoring American manufacturing jobs. As we continue to grow our economy, we have to build on our advantages in training and education. One of my favorite examples is the Department of Defense's Defense Manufacturing Community Support Program. After voting to reauthorize this program in the National Defense Authorization Act, I fought alongside NJMEP to secure one of only 6 grants nationwide to create a defense manufacturing community consortium. This funding will allow NJMEP, working with Picatinny Arsenal, our community colleges, business community, and more, to train hundreds of veterans and their family members for careers in the defense manufacturing ecosystem. Bringing a new vet center to northwestern New Jersey is also one of my top priorities in Congress. In February, I introduced bipartisan legislation known as the Vet Centers for Mental Health Act to ensure more veterans have access to the critical care that they need. My team is working closely with Senator Booker to gather support in the Senate, and we're working hard to get this bill across the finish line. I'd be remiss if I didn't give another shout out here to David Pearson and the NJSOS vets for their tireless advocacy on this issue. They've really been leading the charge to bring another vet center to North Jersey. An exciting piece of legislation I introduced last month was the bipartisan Donut Dolly's Congressional Gold Medal Act to recognize the service of the 627 women who risked their lives to support troops on the front lines of the Vietnam War. These fearless women traveled over 2 million miles across Vietnam by helicopter, truck, and jeep to improve the morale of frontline service members. This legislation would honor their service with a Congressional Gold Medal. Coming up next week will be the markup of the National Defense Authorization Act, where we will go line by line through this must-pass piece of legislation that charts oversight of the Defense Department, addresses national security threats, and provides resources to strengthen Picatinny Arsenal. It also approves pay increases for service members and outlines supportive programs for veterans and their families. And I look forward to getting to work on that. I just want to also mention that I've been in touch with the governor's office, with the ranking member of Transportation and Infrastructure, with other members from our area to make sure that we are doing everything we can in Congress to support the efforts to fix the I-95, which, as you know, collapsed recently outside of Philadelphia. I know New Jersey's been in touch with Pennsylvania to make sure that we are offering the support we need, and I've also been passing along all of the ways in which Congress might be helpful in supporting the needs we have there. So tonight, I'm grateful to have some incredible expertise in the area of veterans issues on this town hall. Joining us today are Juliza Ramírez-Wylie, Associate Director, VA New Jersey Healthcare System and the Lyons campus. She's an Army combat veteran. Allison Jaslow is the CEO of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, and she's an Army combat veteran. So thank you both for joining us. With that, I'd like to get to questions, and we had quite a few pre-submitted for tonight's town hall. So I'm going to start by asking each of our guests questions on topics raised in these pre-submitted questions. If you have questions, you can dial *3 on your keypad at any time to be connected with someone on my staff, and you'll be placed in the queue to ask your question live. So Allison, let's begin with you. As CEO of the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, could you outline the main issues your organization is working on and how Congress could engage with those issues to better help our veterans?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me today. It's an honor to be able to chat not just with you, Congresswoman, but also with your constituents. I value both of your time, or all of your time, greatly. So it's a wonder to be, or it's a pleasure to be able to engage with you this evening. Really quickly, over time, Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, or as we commonly refer to it, IAVA, is the leading voice for the post-9/11 generation of veterans. Over time, we focused on a range of issues. We were a leader in the fight for the new GI Bill. We continue to raise awareness around the need to address veterans suicide. And something I'm very proud of is that we were the only mainstream national veterans organization to make women veterans its #1 priority when we launched our campaign several years back in 2017. We were also involved in the recent debt ceiling debate, and I want to give my thanks to you, Congressman, for helping to ensure that veterans care and benefits were protected in the final deal that was negotiated. It was no sure thing coming out of the gate, but it really took a team effort of people who really wanted to make sure that, especially as you noted, the Toxic Exposure Fund wasn't drained of all of its funds as a part of those negotiations, and we ended up in a really great place. So thank you for your leadership on that. And in real time, IAVA is advocating for a variety of issues of concern for the post-9/11 generation, everything from ensuring that women veterans don't have to pay a copay for contraception that they get from the VA, even though the Affordable Care Act allowed for civilian women to have contraception free of a copay. Unfortunately, the Affordable Care Act overlooked women veterans. And so we are focusing on niche issues like that, but also an emerging issue for our generation of veterans is wanting to get the government open to more alternative therapies. We're a generation of vets who've also lived through the opioid crisis. And so there are a lot of veterans who have chronic pain, PTSD, other wartime wounds, who are looking at alternative ways to get treatment, like cannabis, like MDMA-assisted therapy, for their wartime wounds. And so going forward, we're going to be very interested in having their research in that area and possibly more care for vets so they can have more care options going forward. But anyway, I look forward to working with you, Congresswoman, going forward, but more than anything else, look forward to hearing from your constituents today.
Well, thanks so much, Allison. Thanks for your work on the PACT Act. That is so important, I think, especially to our Iraq and Afghanistan veterans. As I always say, one of the first things I did when I was in my first session of Congress was passing the Blue Water Navy Act, and that helped Vietnam veterans. And I swore to myself then that I would do everything I could to make sure that our veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan received the care they needed far sooner than our Vietnam veterans, and that we would really support them in a way that, unfortunately, we failed too many times for our Vietnam-era veterans. And yes, I love the focus on some of the new treatments, and we see them in, I know I've been through East Orange and some of the different ways people have decided to use different ways of treating their PTSD that they find work for them. And I'm really excited that we're able to offer that treatment to our veterans in New Jersey. So I'm now going to turn to Juliza. Speaking of our VA in New Jersey, could you share an update on how the PACT Act is being implemented at the VA and how people can find out more about accessing treatment?
Hi, thank you, and good evening, everyone. I appreciate your invite and for including VA New Jersey healthcare system to your town hall tonight. Congresswoman Sherrill, I've asked Dr. Michelle Young, our Chief of Staff, to also join me here just to be available to help me answer any clinical questions that may come up in addition to what I have to share with you all today. And I'm delighted to be able to be here to answer your questions and to share some veteran healthcare information with you and your constituents. So the PACT Act rollout for VA New Jersey healthcare system, we've done a lot of outreach in support of rolling out this initiative and making sure that we are reaching out to the veterans in our catchment area regarding their care and the PACT Act, what the PACT Act allows as far as expansion for services. We've had several outreach events at both of our main campuses, East Orange and Lyons, as well as several of our VA clinics. We've geared some of our PACT Act event to special veteran populations to include Vietnam veterans as well as women veterans, to tailor additional information regarding PACT Act eligibility and expansion of services to areas that may be more, interesting to them or more applicable to them in their care. As of pretty recently, we've been able to screen over 26,000 veterans regarding PACT Act eligibilities. We still have more to go. We continue to screen about 700 to 800 veterans a week. And we have, the toxic exposure clinical reminders that are set up for our providers so that when veterans are being seen, they're being reminded to ask questions regarding the additional eligibility that the PACT Act affords us. I also wanted to touch on what Allison mentioned before regarding having more innovative care and like additional options, right? Alternative treatment. We have implemented a lot of our whole health services, and we continue to expand these services for all veterans. We have things regarding integrated medicine and continue to use our Center for Health and Wellness at East Orange to provide acupuncture, mindfulness, yoga. We also provide health coaching to improve overall health and well-being, and classes to include mindful movement, art therapy, and these can be at times virtual groups for our veterans. We have some additional treatment options for women in our women's treatment unit here at Lyons that are alternative types of treatment like equine therapy. And so we're really excited about that. We have an on-site, what we call like an emotional companion, like Dr. We call him Dr. Kai, but he works with our women's treatment unit to provide canine support therapy as well. And we have some healthy lifestyles, health coaching that we continue to provide to help manage diabetes, hypertension, weight, stress, and work-life balance. And we continue to expand these classes. We're currently working on an expansion at Lyons so that we can have some of these whole health services currently being offered at East Orange at Lyons as well. So we're working with the clinical team to make that available in the very near future, as well as increasing healthy kitchen and eating instruction as well. But again, thank you so much for having us on the call.
Thank you so much, and I love that you have Dr. Kai to help with canine therapy. When we were hearing about how many of our veterans had so much help from service dogs, I worked hard in our last Congress to pass the PAWS Act to help our veterans have access to service dog therapy. So I'm glad to hear that you have canine help as well. So I'm going to turn things over to Willie Tolba from my office. If you have questions, remember, press *3 on your keypad at any time to be connected with someone on my staff, and you'll be placed in the queue to ask your question live. So, Willie, over to you.
All right. Thanks, Congresswoman. We're going to start taking live questions. So the first question is going to be Crystal. So, Crystal, I'm going to bring you live here.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Hi, Crystal.
Hello, Congresswoman. So my question is, recently there has been notice that there's a growing cases, about 40% where women who have served in various areas like Iraq and Afghanistan have actually been catching breast cancer with no lineage in their family, probably due to where they were located. And the age that they've been doing it has been lower than 40, and sometimes young as 35 or 30. Has there been any initiatives to maybe change that? Because as we know, we can't get a mammogram fully without question unless we are at 40 years of age.
Thank you, and thanks for that question. That's a really important one. Yeah, unfortunately, we are seeing younger incidences of breast cancer in some of our service women without a family history. So I was proud last year to vote for S2102, the Dr. Kate Hendricks Thomas Service Act. That expands eligibility for Veterans Health Administration mammography screenings to veterans who served in certain locations during specified periods, including those who were exposed to toxic substances at such locations. So it passed last year and was signed into law, and we're still working with our women veterans to see the areas where we can provide more support. And this is a bipartisan issue. I'm working with colleagues on both sides of the aisle to address some of those issues. Many of our women veterans, do face unique challenges based on their experiences and exposure to burn pits, airborne hazards, chemicals, and other factors that women in the military are not normally exposed to. So I was proud to vote for that piece of legislation to help make sure we're getting access to care for women who've had that exposure. Juliza, did you want to add anything to that about women and how they can ensure they're getting timely mammograms?
Absolutely, would love to. So while the PACT Act expands and extends the eligibility for VA health care for veterans with toxic exposure, the Service Act focuses specifically on ensuring that the VA policy permits veterans that are deployed to certain locations during certain periods of time to be eligible for the breast cancer risk assessment and mammography screening if the risk is found. So even though mammogram screenings in women under the age of 30 are not generally recommended or considered useful for that group, particularly if there are no risk factors present, the Service Act allows for our women veterans who are between the ages of 30 and 39 to request a risk assessment through their primary care providers. So VA clinical experts would recommend, in general, to have a clinical risk review taken into account. So they'll look at things like your family medical history and other risk factors to determine whether you should have the mammogram. And then if that's the case and it's determined so clinically, then they would proceed and they're able to, with the Service Act, there's more eligibility for us to do that as women veterans. For other women veterans who have perhaps an average risk of breast cancer, we would still be able to have that screening provided, ages 40 or 45 years old and older, of course.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Willie, next question?
Absolutely. So, Congresswoman, the next question came from Wayne, the commander of the Butler VFW. He reached out to me. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to join today, but he did want to send along this question. So his question is, Congresswoman, can you give an update on the Major Richard Starr Act? And just for those listening who aren't familiar with it, the law allows service members who are medically retired but have less than 20 years of service to receive retirement and VA disability pay at the same time.
Yeah, thanks. I get a lot of questions about this. So as you said, Willie, as most people probably know, the Major Richard Starr Act was reintroduced this March in this Congress. I'm proud to be a co-sponsor, as I was in the last Congress as well. Veterans who retired for medical reasons should absolutely receive every penny of the benefits they've earned. So last Congress, it was the single most co-sponsored piece of legislation. We weren't able to get it across the finish line. So the good news is that the bill recently passed an important milestone. It now has 2/3 of the House of Representatives as co-sponsors, which means it'll be guaranteed a vote. So I'll be looking forward to that. And I'm working with my colleagues to make sure that we get this bipartisan bill not just voted for in Congress, but passed into law on the President's desk. So that is the most recent update. I'll keep everyone informed on when we get a date for that vote.
All right, Congresswoman, the next question is going to be from D from Wayne. I'm going to bring her live now.
Well, hi, Congressman Sherrill. I just want to thank you and all the military personnel and veterans out there for your service. I'm the daughter of a veteran, and my dad served in World War II, and he was able to take advantage of the GI Bill after World War II, which lifted millions of veterans and their families and created the great middle class that America is known for today. So I'd like to know, do we have policies in place right now to do the same for our veterans? And if not, is it time for a GI Bill 2.0 for today's veterans to do the same for them and their families and for our country?
Thanks so much. Yes, the post-9/11 veterans have access to the GI Bill. And because of that legislation, which is so important, and I love how you framed it, I think this is an area, too, where it's important to I just think it's important when we understand, and this kind of devolves into other areas, but the GI Bill is something that really did lift so many people in this country out of poverty. I know when my own grandfather, before he went to war, they were living with his grandparents because his dad had lost his job in the Great Depression. So it was really important. And I think we need to remember, though, in that post-World War II era, unfortunately, so many of our Black service members at that time did not have access to that, which is something that I think when we talk about economic justice now, that's just something that's always on my mind as I think about that initial GI Bill. Fortunately, the post 9/11 GI Bill has no such limitations, but we worked hard to make sure there's access for training, for veteran training programs, as we reshore American manufacturing jobs to provide, again, more access and opportunities to our veteran community. Allison, did you want to add anything about some of the opportunities available to vets, either under the GI Bill or other opportunities?
I think something that doesn't get enough attention is the fact that recently, if you're a veteran in crisis or know a veteran in crisis, you don't just have to go to the VA for your services and or fumble around in a scattered healthcare system. You can actually the federal government will make sure that you will still get care in the community where you prefer to get, especially counseling services. But again, not just vets, but if you know another vet who is dealing with mental health struggles, if you feel like, they're on the ledge, if they don't want to go to the VA, they can actually go to any other healthcare facility. And the intent of this is to help us address the veteran suicide crisis. And there are real reasons why some people wouldn't want to go to the VA. I think the VA is wonderful, but survivors of MST, for example, military sexual trauma, could be resistant to going to the VA because it's a culture so much like the culture where they experienced their trauma. And so I think it's a great thing, and there's not enough attention that's been around the fact that I think it was the Compact Act, made available crisis mental health care services, and especially suicide prevention for veterans in crisis to any healthcare facility. So if you know somebody, if they don't have insurance or they don't want to go to the VA, they can be treated at another healthcare facility. And I think that's something that doesn't get enough attention and hasn't been marketed as much as, the benefits in the PACT Act, for example.
That's a really good point, and I don't think that gets enough attention for sure. And certainly, as we're facing the mental health crisis across the country, often related to COVID, we know that some of our veterans have been struggling as well with some of the isolation. And certainly, I know the pullout from Afghanistan re-traumatized many of our Vietnam veterans too. So it's great to have that flag. Willie, I'll turn it back over to you.
Absolutely, Congresswoman. One thing I just want to do is I do want to remind everyone, if you have a question, you can dial *3 on your keypad at any time. You'll connect it with one of our screeners and our staff, and will be placed in the queue to ask your question live. All right, so for the next question, we're going to do another pre-submitted question. So this one is going to be from Emerson from Randolph. So his question for you is, Congresswoman, can you give an update on efforts to make Narcan more accessible to veterans?
That's another great question. Thanks, Emerson. So this is something that has been flagged, and I anticipate that the National Defense Authorization Act this year, which we will be marking up for a vote next week in our committee, will include provisions on the use, distribution, and regulation of Narcan. It's a medication that can help people who are currently experiencing overdose from an opioid. So as a staunch supporter of ensuring our service members have the tools they need, I'm going to support the inclusion and passage of regulating Narcan in the NDAA so we can get it out to our service members. I don't know if Allison or Juliza, if you guys want to add anything to that.
Yes,
we're
here
good.
for the.
Yeah.
Hi, I just wanted to add, for VA New Jersey healthcare system, we definitely understand the value of having Narcan accessible, especially during times of emergencies. On our campus, our police are required to have Narcan with them, and of course for responses as well. We know that it can save lives, and absolutely support being able to do so while the veterans are getting health care here.
Yeah, sadly, I think we understand how important that is to have widely distributed. And then I will kick it back to you, Willie.
Great, thank you. All right, Congresswoman, the next question is going to be from Mary Jane from Wayne. Bringing you live now, Mary Jane.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, how are you?
I'm okay, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
So this is just probably an easy, quick question, but I heard you guys speaking about the PTSD earlier, and I was wondering if an alternative treatment offered is ketamine, because I know that's still kind of a up in the air sort of thing. And I'm a nurse, and I've seen it used for PTSD patients, and it's been a remarkable success for a lot of them. But I know that there are still a lot of regulations around it.
Juliza, do you know what the current treatment with respect to ketamine is in the VA system?
So unfortunately, no, I don't have very clear information on that. Dr. Young, are you still on the line? Perhaps you can provide a clinical response to this.
Yeah, I'm still on the line. Yes, you're correct. It is still quite complicated, and there are studies in the VA looking at ketamine. We don't currently offer it on a regular basis, and we don't have any studies right here, right now in VA New Jersey, but it is something that we are continuing to look at, as well as review some of the literature, because it does offer, I agree with you, it does offer some exciting opportunities for further study. I think that more will be known, hopefully in the near future.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for bringing that up, and thanks, Dr. Young. I know I just co-sponsored legislation on some microdosing that we had been put forward, so I'll certainly keep an eye out. And if we need to do more in Congress on ketamine, and if that's something that we're seeing good results in, I'm happy to look into that as well. Thanks so much, Dr. Young.
Sure.
Yes, thank you. I just want to say thank you too, because we have seen some remarkable outpatient results for people that are really at the end of, they're really having a hard time functioning. There's nothing else, and I just wish that it could be offered to more, especially the veterans, because they probably don't have the resources a lot of the times to afford it on their own.
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, recently something came across my desk, and I read it just the other day. I don't remember all the idiosyncrasies, but clearly it's a conversation happening. So I think that's an important issue, is that it is being discussed and looked at.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Back to you, Willie.
All right, Congresswoman, the next question is going to come from Erica from Mottville.
Hi, this seems like a very basic question, but I have a lot of employees who are veterans, and they have no way to they don't drive, and they have no transportation to services. So what can I do to help these employees get to you?
Juliza, do you have advice for how, what services you provide to get people to the VA?
Yes. So we do have transportation services available within our VA healthcare system. We've got a team of over 39 drivers that are able to provide support for veterans requiring assistance for access to care. There are some eligibility requirements, and we do have to have the providers submit a consult request for the transport, and then our team, checks eligibility and is able to provide that support. I also know that out in our community there are, Lyons is a bit tough because of where we're located. East Orange may have some additional opportunities for transport within community assets, but internally we are able to provide support as noted earlier. So it would just be a matter of the veterans reaching out to the provider, letting them know what's going on so that we can get the consult in and get them vetted and provided with that support.
Thanks so much. And back to you, Willie.
All right. Thank you. Our next caller, Congresswoman, is going to be Lucy from Belleville.
Lucy, are you on the line?
She's coming live.
Yes, I am.
Hi. So when I mentioned
how are you?
I am great. When I mentioned that SOS Veterans and the Women's Subcommittee has been so important in getting the work done to bring New Jersey, today being Women's Veterans Day, and then working on it nationally, Lucy was at the forefront of that charge and continues to be such an incredible advocate for our women veterans. So I just want to thank you for joining us because you've been such an amazing advocate. And I know you're going to be in D.C. next week with the National Women's Law Center to be on a panel discussion at the showing of the documentary I Am Vanessa Guillen. Can you tell everyone a little bit about the focus of that event and which issues you're highlighting?
Sure. So yes, next week on Tuesday at the National Women's Law Center is hosting an event at the National Press Club. The highlight of the event is again protecting those who served. It's the discussion is basically about ending military sexual trauma and fighting for reproductive rights, which is something that is on a hot topic as well. So there is going to be clips from the I Am Vanessa Guillen Netflix documentary Invisible War, and also the hashtag I Am Vanessa Guillen documentary that was produced by Univision. So a lot of panel discussions, with Lynn Rosenthal, myself, Lindsay Church from Minority Veterans of America. So the list goes on and on of who's going to be there. You could register online. And the registration is available through the National Women's Law Center. If you're in the D.C. area and you would like to join us on Tuesday, it's going to be a great event.
Well, Lucy, as always, thank you so much. And it was so nice of you to stop by because I know you were on your way to the Women Veterans Dinner happening in New Jersey tonight. So I will let you go.
Yes.
Have a great evening. I wish I could be with you guys. And thank you for all the work you do.
No, and thank you for everything you do for us because, if we don't have constituents, when we don't have legislators like you in that forefront, you are really making change for us. And it's always great to work alongside you. The initiatives you brought to the table are so important to all of us. So thank you so much for everything you do.
No, I think a lot of that's because of your work. We could have a mutual appreciation society, but thanks, Lucy, and have a great night.
And go Army.
Oh,
Team Navy.
I was so appreciative of you for just a moment.
Okay.
Have a great night and happy Women's Veterans Day. Have a good one.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Bye.
Bye. Okay, Willie, back to you.
Great, thank you. Congresswoman, our next question is going to come from Derek.
Oh, great. Madam Congresswoman, nice to speak to you.
Nice speaking to you.
Great. I had a question. It's so great to hear so much support for all the veterans. What I was wondering, is there any way we could get more support for our first responders?
Sure. Yeah. So I will tell you. Yep, go ahead.
Like our policemen and firemen?
Yep. So, so one of the first things that I did when I got into the first Congress was to help fully fund the Victims' Compensation Fund for our 9/11 first responders. And a lot of that work around the 9/11 first responders, I think, really informed my work under the PACT Act, because a lot of the same, we were seeing a lot of the same healthcare concerns with our service members as we were seeing from our first responders who worked on the pile with that toxic soup of chemicals and the rare diseases that we were seeing there. So that was incredibly important. I've also co-sponsored a number of bills to provide health care to first responders. So there's the H.R. 2499, that's the Federal Firefighters Fairness Act, providing federal workers' compensation to firefighters who contract certain illnesses as a result of their service. We have the H.R. 2111, Military Firefighters Protection Act. This establishes presumptions of service connection for diseases associated with firefighting to ensure that firefighters are eligible for health benefits regarding those diseases. We have H.R. 1719, Honoring Our Fallen Heroes Act. That expands access to federal support for the families of firefighters and first responders who pass away from cancer caused by carcinogenic exposure during their service, and also extends disability benefits in cases where they become permanently and totally disabled due to cancer. And then there's the mortgage assistance for first responders, the H.R. 3172 Helper Act. That provides mortgage assistance to law enforcement officers, elementary and secondary school teachers, firefighters, and other first responders. So certainly that's an area that I've been very active in, and thank you so much for bringing that up. All right, back to you, Willie.
All right, Congresswoman. So on the line, we actually have Emerson from Randolph. He is actually able to join us, so I'm going to bring us live.
Fantastic. Hi, Emerson.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing a lot better. I'm doing well. So my question today is, how can we do a better job in informing the veterans and also the providers as to the programs that we have? They're really great workout, and just like any other thing, the PACT Act and community care, things that are new, it takes a while for people to fully understand it and get it to work correctly. We still get complaints from veterans in terms of they go out on an emergency and they use a provider, and then the provider seems to not understand any of these programs, or they're not informed. And so we have veterans that get folks running behind them with a bill, whether it's a hospital or just an emergency place, that provided care. So how can we do a better job in getting this information out to providers to avoid that in terms of what the procedures are?
Yeah, I think that is something that's constantly on my mind, is making sure not only that we have the programs in place, but that veterans are aware of the programs and that providers are aware of the programs. And that's certainly been something we've long been pushing, in different programs, extra support for outreach from the VA. And I'm going to turn it over to Juliza in a second to talk a little bit about what the VA is working on in that area. But I'd also say the work that you do, Emerson, the work that SOS Vets does, and the work David Pearson does with Catholic Charities, and some of the roundtables that we've had to get the word out on veterans, different veteran support, is something that I think, in our community, we continue to work very hard, and I do appreciate, like I said, all the work you do to get that information out. But, Juliza, do you want to talk a little bit about what the VA is doing to kind of make sure people in the community and providers are aware of these programs?
Absolutely, and thank you. I know this is a concern we hear about often during town halls or issues that will come up individually with veterans navigating community care billing concerns. We have a community care department within VA New Jersey healthcare system. It continues to grow and evolve, reaching out to our network providers, those who are registered to provide services for veterans of VA New Jersey, as well as the emergency providers, I mean, a lot of that coverage we understand for emergency care is it's a little bit more flexible, right? If there's an emergency, you're able to get that care and then follow up with billing. If there are issues specific to billing, we have patient advocates who are available and able to help navigate the concerns. They can get the veteran in contact with our community care office so that they can look at those specific bill concerns. Some of the issues that we come across is sometimes veterans misunderstanding what the coverage is, may go out to the community without a referral and, get care and not have that in advance for non-emergent care. And so that can become a difficult, billing situation. So we ask that, please, if it's non-emergent, if you're getting services out in the community, that you connect with your providers, make sure that there's a consult in the system so that we can route the billing appropriately. And again, if you're having issues with billing, that you reach out to our patient advocates. If you navigate to our VA New Jersey Healthcare website, you'll see we have several patient advocates, their contact information available for you to connect with them, and they can connect you with the right person. Most often it's our community care office to help you navigate the billing and to make sure we can close the loop.
Thanks. Allison, is this something you hear about from your community at all? And is there a way we could all do better to support our veterans with information?
I think I hear stories more of, unfortunately, care out in the community that could be reimbursed by the VA, but kind of like how you hear with Medicare patients, there are some really great providers who don't like dealing with the paperwork. And so acupuncture is a good example. I know an acupuncturist who won't take VA patients anymore, even though that could be a great, as we were discussing earlier, alternative therapy. But they won't take VA patients because they got frustrated with the process of getting reimbursed for that care. And then I would just, hammer home on what I said before. I hope that veterans who are in crisis and in danger of taking their own lives aren't being billed or turned away, for that matter, at care in the community, because the federal government, Congress, has put support in place to make sure that veterans in crisis have care wherever they need to turn. And so the last thing I would want to hear is if somebody in that situation was getting billed afterwards. But definitely something to keep an eye on. And I'm glad that the gentleman raised the concern to not just you, but while I was on the call too. So it'd be something we can keep an eye on as an advocacy organization.
Yeah, that is. And please continue to reach out if there's more we can do in Congress, because this is something that I think is the next step as we get a lot of these programs in place, especially to take care of some of our veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan, making sure they get the word. And certainly that our women veterans get the word on some of the new services available. Okay, I'm going to kick it back to Willie.
Thanks, Congresswoman. So we have time for one more question, and we're going to go to one of the questions submitted from the internet here. So this is Wayne from Lincoln Park, asks, I'd like to know why the U.S. government requires a retired soldier to be enrolled in Medicare Part B in order to be eligible for TRICARE once they turn 65.
Thanks, Willie. So all military retirees have been required to enroll in Medicare since it was established in 1965. So this is, from the start. Under the current law, TRICARE eligibility ends at age 65 because that's where the Medicare program picks up. Under TRICARE for Life, which was created in 2001, military retirees are eligible for Medicare, and TRICARE for Life functions as a supplement. So the bad news is that retirees have to pay Part B premiums, but the good news is that that's the only cost that's required. TRICARE for Life ensures that retirees pay nothing more than Part B premiums. So I think we will have to, unfortunately, end there, but I want to just thank everyone so much for calling in. Thank you for joining us for the Veterans Telephone Town Hall. Thank you, Allison and Juliza. Thank you, Dr. Young. I really appreciate everybody for all the great information we got tonight. And thanks for everyone who called in for your questions. If we didn't get to your question tonight, my team and I are ready to help get you an answer. So you can email my office at sherrill.house.gov/contact, or call our offices. Our DC office number is 202-225-5034, and our district office is 973-526-5668. My casework team has also been monitoring the questions and will reach out to people as needed to see if we can offer more help. You can also follow me on Facebook for the latest updates from my office. And I also have a newsletter with updates on my work in Washington, which you can sign up for at sherrill.house.gov. So thank you again, everyone, for joining me today. Stay safe, stay healthy, take care, go Navy, and have a great day. Thanks, everybody.